right, welcome to the Stretch to Go podcast. My name is Ian Ray, your host. Today I have Llewellyn, based co-founder of Moon Deck Footwear, based out of St. Petersburg and Reno, Nevada. So, Will, welcome to the Stretch to Go podcast.
Yeah, appreciate it. It took us a little while to get together, but yeah, appreciate the opportunity to have me on, and glad to be here on a Sunday.
Yes. So, Will, when I first came across Moon Deck, which was months ago, so I grew up in Hawaii. I grew up where I'm out on the beach, out in the sun. I hate, I do wear slippers, but at times I like to protect my feet. So this really caught my eyes, especially the backless shoe. Kind of talk about what makes Moon Deck so unique in the footwear space, but even especially like, let's say barefoot, wide toe box. So what makes it so unique?
Yeah, I'll talk about why we started this whole thing to begin with, and then I'll get into the barefoot, the wide foot shoe component after that. But I had bought an old sailboat with my brother down in St. Pete, Florida, and really had nothing to do with footwear to begin with. But we, after going down there and living out of a backpack and teaching ourselves how to sail and all that, we were constantly switching between athletic shoes from when we were going out on the town, running errands and that kind of thing, to our slides and sandals when we were out on the boat in the marina. And so it was just all day switching back and forth. And so we clearly saw a need for a shoe that could handle both use cases, but something more of the modern kind of athleisure athletic style shoe that we normally wear when we're walking around everywhere. And so if you just took all of those things together, we felt like there really wasn't anything that we were looking for. And so we just went down this 4 or 5 year path of having no footwear experience to taking that idea to concept and into prototype and into actual production now. So it's been about 5 years total, and you're catching us at a time where we've had a successful Kickstarter campaign last fall, and now we're selling online. We just launched our website, really selling out of our warehouse like a normal up and running business now, only about a month ago. And in the meantime, we've been setting up relationships with retailers. We think that's going to be a big market for us. And so we're in about 20 stores, heading towards 30 stores in 8 or 9 states at this point. So yeah, it's an interesting time in the Moon Deck process. And so obviously it's a unique silhouette here. It's a backless design, something that you can slip into. But really the important part about the shoe last or the shape is this wide toe box here. Mm-hmm. And I go back to about 4 years ago, right when we started designing this, I actually had foot surgery. So I had what's called hallux rigidus, and it's a pretty common thing. It's stiffness and arthritis in the big toe joint. And for me, the reason was I just naturally have a little bit of a wider foot. I would say slightly wider than average, probably, but nothing too crazy. But I did play a lot of sports growing up, and I would cram my feet into the tightest possible cleats possible. So whether I was playing football or baseball or soccer or whatnot, I went 30 years of just jamming my foot into as tight of a space as possible. And so you can now see my foot has kind of the wide base, but the toes are all pointing in towards each other. And that's specifically from the footwear that I was wearing. It wasn't until the actual process of meeting with these doctors and having the surgery to correct that, at the same time we were designing a shoe at just happenstance. It was not planned like that. And so obviously we took that into the design. And so the things that we wanted to accomplish were just convenience, something you could slip into, and something that stays on the foot so you can slide into it and then walk long distances because it grips you on the midfoot, but your foot opens up into a wide toe box. And so that splay allows your feet and your toes to spread out naturally. And so that's probably the main component of the design. And also just doing it in a way that's not too extreme, that has the natural shape, but also doesn't have an extreme feel or look to it for people that don't have extra wide feet. So.
Gotcha. So would you say, like, where would you put Moon Deck's footwear? Like, is it more like the minimalist, like anatomical, or like wide toe box? Like where would you say? Because that's it's a thing to most consider. Like you're saying, most people's foot probably would feel comfortable, but wide foot, they will probably feel tighter. So where would you say the foot shape is like?
Yeah. So The way that we talk about it is it's a barefoot-inspired shoe. So we're taking the elements of a barefoot shoe, but it's technically not. If you're a barefoot shoe purist out there, right? You could find ways that to say that this is not technically a barefoot shoe, and I tend to agree with that. But it has a minimal drop also, right? So it's a pretty big sole. So it's obviously your foot's not sitting on the ground, right? There's a little bit of a cushion here, but there's a lip here, so your heel sinks in further than it looks just looking at the shoe from the side. And
Yeah.
so it has a very minimal, yeah. So you're closer to the ground than it looks, and it has a minimal drop, right? But it does have some drop. So it's about 4 or 5 millimeters, 3 to 5 millimeters from the back here to the front, depending on the size. And then there's a little bit of cushion, right? I think a true barefoot shoe really doesn't have much cushion. And we didn't want to go crazy on it. But for me, where I'm okay with it being barefoot inspired is, I tend to spend most of my time on artificial, hard, man-made surfaces. And so, the point of a barefoot shoe is to go back to the way our feet were naturally exposed and moving around this earth, right? But you add the fact that, well, 1,000 years ago, we weren't walking on artificial hard surfaces like we are today. So I think a little bit of cushion is okay and warranted. I got nothing against. I like having all the different variations possible. So yeah, that's where I put us, barefoot inspired, but intentionally adding in a little bit of cushion there. So.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I mean, if you're on a boat for days, right? Let's say just going around and you're in minimal footwear, I'm sure that your foot's going to be in pain a lot. So I think that there has to be, I agree, there has to be some kind of cushion for that type of, being on your foot all day, whether if you're out on the boat or if you're, going back into town. So that's one thing I've always, was curious too, is with the whole toe box, because I know there's brands such as Hey Dudes, Sperry's, typical boat, relaxed kind of shoes that people would probably wear. They're not barefoot shoes, but do you think for those people who are wearing, let's say, Sperry's or Hey Dudes, do you think this is just a great transition for them? Because they'll probably feel it in that toe splay, correct?
Yeah, I think so. This would be a good transition, and it's the athletics, again, the athletic style alternative to those shoes and brands. So similar use case, as you can probably guess, as to a Hey Dude or a Sperry or a Croc, right? But it's the athleisure style. So the person that likes to wear, athletic shoes for walking, I would say those who are actually our most common customer right now is not necessarily the boat use case. Certainly where this story started, right? But it has a much broader use case than that. Who we see purchasing our shoes the most are those that are wearing Brooks, Hoka's, Ons, nice kind of the high end athletic shoes that they're just wearing for walking shoes. And this is an alternative for them to step into something that has the convenience angle to it. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And then I guess that kind of goes into the story, because your background, you're in the medical field, right?
So yeah, my brother Joe is in the medical field.
Okay.
I don't think I was smart enough for that one. So he was always he was a drug researcher for more than 10 years. And hence why we let him handle the legal and the finance components of the business. I do more of the marketing and the creative side. But I've spent 10 years working for agriculture technology startups, and still am to this day. And that's kind of aligned with what I had studied back at university. And yeah, that was my first passion, and I'm still working in that. But 5 years ago, me and my brother decided we wanted to start a business together. And so we both had our normal day, full-time, very high demanding, high pressure kind of jobs, and said, well, how are we going to do this with that? And really the answer, how we've gotten it from just an idea to an actual commercial business now, is just, it's a slow burn, but being consistent, right? So I like to say to myself all the way back then is, if you're able to put in 1 hour a day, 7 days a week over the course of, the next 3 or 4 years, see where you can take it. And that way it's a palatable amount of work to do on top of my day job without burning out on either end, really. But really able to, with that level of consistency over that amount of time, teach myself some pretty interesting and cool things like building websites, running ads, social media stuff, all that stuff or skills that I traditionally wouldn't have been a part of during my day job has been really fun. And I think it's learning those new skills that has been just super invaluable across not only Moon Deck, but just myself and my day job as well.
And then as far as like the shoe, when you guys were making the prototypes, I'm assuming you guys went through several prototypes to finally come up with these, right?
Yeah.
What was the process? What was the process like, man? Because I love hearing that story of founders of like creating the shoe, and then of course like having it aesthetically looking well. So kind of talk to us the process of creating this Moon Decks.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about it for 10 hours. We have a very long and interesting process for how that happened, which includes actually prototypes in 3 different countries to get to the point where we are now, which we're manufacturing in Vietnam. We have unbelievable partners that have helped us develop and get to this point. But when we first started, we, again, absolutely no experience in footwear. And so knocking on the door of footwear factories as a couple of brothers who don't even know what a last is a very humbling experience. And so it's been this culmination of just learning learning in general, but not being afraid to talk to people and learn from them and network. And every time we have a conversation, we're learning something. But yeah, thinking back to our first factory partner in Mexico was this guy who was willing to take a flyer on us, and his name's Sergio, and he was a really great guy and was interested in our project. So we got his attention. He knew we didn't know much about footwear, so he was comfortable with us asking all the dumb questions and brought it all the way to a physical prototype. Unfortunately, that was during the time of COVID, and so I think it was a combination of supply chain issues that were happening right as we had selected our materials. Those materials then became unavailable, at which point, an idea and a startup like us is harder to manage for the factory. And so we decided after about a year actually of just working kind of slowly and developing our first prototype with them that we would go our separate ways. Really thankful for that time and that energy and those calories that Sergio and the team in Mexico had put in for us. And that was an education for my brother and I, and allowed us to kind of to level up our knowledge of footwear, what we wanted. We were able to hit kind of reset and just go, okay, let's just look at the process that we just went through and let's become more efficient with the next factory that we approach. And let's be really cognizant and intentional on these early conversations, because the early conversations that you have with a factory establish the process as a whole. And so we're, I think, fortunate to continue to stick with it. And we actually then went to Portugal, which is well known for really high quality products, sustainably sourced materials. And again, we partnered with a factory there, and our shoe is evolving, getting a little bit better as we go. Our ideas are getting more crisp, more clear. We now know what a last is. We know what an IRO is. We know how to talk about a little bit about shoes with the factory at that point. But certainly still, we were still novices at that point. And to be quite honest with you, we probably weren't quite efficient enough in expressing the outcome that we wanted. And so the process there, we took the next step up, right, in the prototype. We got a little bit closer to what we wanted, but it wasn't moving fast enough, probably for the factory and for us. And so we had a crossroads. We're now talking 3 years into this process from first idea to now a second prototype, second country. We traveled to Portugal this time, visited the factory, got to know some of the people. And so that one was pretty actually disappointing to go our separate ways there, but it really made sense at the time. And me and my brother remember having this conversation. We talked for a couple hours, and it was a really clear opportunity for us to drop the project. And we were probably leaning towards that direction after, kind of two attempts to bring a product to actual commercial production with 2 different factories. A lot of work. It's a lot of time. There's some money involved in that, obviously, to continue the development. And we decided we really wanted to do this. We really loved the idea of the backless shoe. and still believed in our design. So we said, let's take one more shot at this. Let's once again level up in our knowledge and in our approach and gather our thoughts and just see what happens, because we'll probably regret it if we just drop this project here. So at about the 4th year, we approached Vietnam after kind of a global search of, well, where else makes sense? Portugal actually probably doesn't make the most sense for this kind of shoe looking back at it, but Vietnam does. There's a lot of things that they do really well there in footwear production, especially the athletic kind of shoes. And so, we took that approach. Let's go with a region that's really good at producing athletic shoes versus maybe more of the casual angle of the shoe. And let's expand our network. Let's consult with some people. Let's go even more prepared into this third country, third factory. And we met the most amazing partner possible. We're very fortunate to met the factory partner that we have there, and what we delivered, the tech pack that we delivered to them, is actually pretty close to the final product that we have here. So it was a much streamlined process going through it for the 3rd time, and now I somewhat feel like I have an honorary degree in footwear development, certainly compared to where we first started when we couldn't hold our own in the most basic form of a footwear conversation. So yeah, and then we're the factory, and our relationship is really strong. We're working on LT2 version 2 of this, and launching some new colors and a new style from here. So we're still selling through our first production run, but that's going pretty quickly, and momentum is really strong right now. And so we're on making plans for our second production run here coming up here in the summer and fall.
Nice. I meant to ask you first. I should have asked you earlier. So I always ask the question of, why did you name the brand it is, like Moon Deck? There's a story also behind Moon Deck, right? That you and your brother were talking underneath the moon on the deck. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. So just we were thinking about names. It was, well, where literally did this start? And we just go back to some of the good moments that we had living on the sailboat and sitting on the deck of the sailboat in the marina in downtown St. Petersburg at night under the moon. That's it. Moon Deck. So that's as simple as that. And everybody asks that question. It distills down to a very basic story. So yeah.
That's crazy. Were you guys avid travelers? Like, I noticed kind of on your Instagram, like you guys travel a lot, doing a lot of hiking adventures and stuff, and that kind of led you down to owning a boat, or what was the story of that too?
Yeah, so Joe is the mountain man. He's the mountain guy. He's been doing that for many years now, but traveling around, taking trips, climbing different mountains, exploring. He's much more hardcore in that respect. I'm more of the coastal, ocean, laid back guy, and I'm originally from Minnesota, so that whole experience, I would compare the walking to a footwear factory for the first time and not knowing how to talk about shoes to a similar level of experience as to when I bought the sailboat in St. Pete. In terms of sailing, that was not my cup of tea at the time, and so I bought that boat on Craigslist. I think it was $5,000, and just sight unseen. But it came with a slip in the marina, and so I was middle of winter. It's probably January in Minnesota, and I was like, this is a great way just to get out, go to a great part of the U.S. and get into some nice weather. And we get down there thinking we're just gonna, I don't know, take it out and start sailing the bay and start sailing to the Keys and all that, and couldn't be further from the truth. The boat was run down. We had to rebuild the engine. Just spent more time elbow deep in grease taking an engine apart watching YouTube videos than we did actually sailing. But we did get the boat in a position where we actually got it out and sailing in the Tampa Bay from St. Pete, but it definitely never made it out of the bay. So, but it was a learning experience, much like starting a footwear company was as well.
Awesome, man. Those are tough lessons you learn along the way, which is great. I mean, kind of led you down to the path of finding this, and I think that's part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I want to follow up on that because, like, getting into retail stores, especially like, I'm all about exposing people about the benefits of having a wide toe box, at least, to give that toe splay. Because if anything, if you were to switch shoes, and in my opinion, is like at least a wide toe box and it's something that's a zero drop. Because when I first got into minimalist footwear, is the ultra running shoes, which they're known for, So, and I feel like this is one of the great alternatives for those people who are looking for boat shoes, or like you're saying, athleisure shoes, because it has that wide toe box. And hopefully that gives people the sense like, my foot actually needs that splay instead of being squished into a narrow toe box,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what's your take of, the wide toe box. Cause like I said, I'm not sure if you've worn barefoot shoes in the past or currently do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love my so I love Ultras. The Escalante 4 is a shoe that I'll run in. I think that's one of the best ones to ever do it right there. And then Lems is another brand that I have a lot of respect for. I have a couple of pairs of Lems. So those are the two that I actually wear. I genuinely wear those ones in my daily life. And so I would say our toe box shape is probably a hybrid of those two.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when you're, I'll walk you through this example. I was invited to an outdoor festival in St. Pete. They had seen our story that we had launched on Kickstarter, and they invited me to come to a booth. And I had brought a size run, so we had one pair of each size, and I had set them out so that people could come in and try them on. And just trying them on kind of speaks for itself. And we had like a really great day selling shoes that day. Sold probably 17 pairs of shoes from people that were going to a festival just to eat food and drink beer, and we're not planning on buying shoes that day for sure.
That's awesome.
But it's just the wide toe box and the toe shape. So people were really curious about the no back design. And then what closes the deal is when you actually try them on. And so you slide them on, and then feeling the comfort is a true aha moment when your foot has no pressure on either side to it, and it just gets to relax naturally.
Yeah.
There's honestly not a whole lot of explaining that has to do at that point. So I think that was like, that day really sticks in my head as all right. I think we're actually onto something here. And another reason why I think the retail market is going to be a good route for us, because it's really hard to execute a direct to consumer strategy and explain and educate people in that. When they get in front of it though and try it on, again, there's very little explaining that has to do. And of course, there's all sorts of health benefits that you can explain, but watching people come to that conclusion on their own when they slide it on is probably the most satisfying part of the business for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I can't agree more. I mean, that's what makes like the sticking point for most people, is that once they realize oh my gosh, my foot has been crammed in this coffin, this narrow toe box for so long, and they wear something that gives them that splay. I think that awakens their sense that the foot has been, atrophied, or it needs that room to, like I said, wiggle and to move around. Because that's my journey into barefoot shoes is, from injuries, and of course, just slipping on and walking on barefoot shoes just for 30 minutes a day kind of helped me to sense that the foot is such an important part. And I think this, the evolution of barefoot shoes, it's growing, and the future is here. I think this is going to be one of the ones that helps people transition into it, if anything, to barefoot shoes. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And we feel that having a backless version of that helps us differentiate. We don't see too many competitors trying to do exactly that. Certainly, there are other styles, backless mules, and all sorts of things. But in terms of what really makes this unique is the fact that it's a slip-on. But if you think about having a wide toe box, then that creates a little bit of a design issue, because in order for this to stay on your foot in a way that you can just walk around without having to shuffle your feet or worrying about trying to keep it on, that's where a lot of our development went into. So how to kind of narrow the midfoot, have a wide toe box, but narrow the midfoot. And then we have an elastic gore right here, which also helps grip onto the midfoot. And that's that's where we put most of our design efforts in, is just being able to slide in, have that wide toe box, but in a way that's kind of effortlessly then staying on your foot, more so than a slide or a flip flop.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think that's another thing that they talk about too. Even if you were to wear like slides, your foot is still gripping and clawing. So this definitely secures the foot in there and makes it so convenient for people on the go, or you use this as a recovery slide. Because I don't like recovery slides, this is probably going to be your best alternative, like I said.
Yeah.
But cool.
Yep.
Kind of talking about the business as I'm wrapping up, I'd love to hear, where does Moon Deck headed towards? I know you're talking about the second editions coming out, but like, where do you see Moon Deck happening for 5-10 years from now? Like, where do you hope to see Moon Deck in the footwear industry?
Yeah, it's honestly really hard for us to think 5 to 10 years out. Our philosophy is not to try to get too far ahead of ourselves and focus on what we can just do today. What can I do in this 1 hour of time here? And that might sound cliche, but to be quite honest with you, we aren't looking 5 to 10 years out. What we want is to continue to create shoes that people love and feel comfortable, and then have a profitable business that we can scale. And we're going to continue at the kind of the gradual pace, the organic, slower pace that we've started this business on, and just build it store by store, just independent stores, independent retail locations. We have some sales reps now that are really stoked about these shoes. And so that was a big moment for us, getting them on board. But it's going to be, try to create other styles and variations with this silhouette, but improve on it, get data back from people, understand where we can make improvements on this style and on future styles. And what I want to see is, we want to establish, the Moon Deck fit. We just want to become kind of synonymous with our own shape and our own style. And people look at it and go, yeah, that feels like a Moon Deck right there, and are able to understand how we're unique and kind of different than others in the market. So yeah, that's it. I don't know. I don't have a 10-year plan, honestly, on this front, but hopefully we're still in business. That would be great, and growing a little bit.
Cool. And then where can my subscribers, followers, where can they find a pair of Moon Deck, whether in store or in person? So kind of give us the rundown of where are they able to fit their feet in?
Yeah. So for the majority of the country, right, since we're so new, 20 stores, not very many. And when you consider just trying to hit all 50 states, but definitely go to moondeck.co. You can go on there and buy a pair of shoes, and it's free shipping, and we have returns. So if something doesn't fit, we can go from there. We always like to say, if you're a half size and you're a male, round up to the next whole size, because this is whole sizes only. And for the women, if you're a half size, you would round down to the nearest whole size. But where we have in store, if you happen to live in the St. Pete area or in Florida, we have 8 or 9 stores there now. It's going to be growing pretty quickly there to probably 15 or 20 stores just in Florida by next fall, I would imagine. And then there's a number of stores where my brother lives in Reno and the surrounding Lake Tahoe area and all that. And then we'll probably be creating another centralized area of stores here in Minnesota, which I'm up here for the summer for. So we'll just probably spend some of my extra time knocking on doors. And then, I think it's going to be a lot different in 6 months from now, just because we now have a sales team out there running and tapping into their networks. So I think we're going to have many more opportunities 6 months from now on the East Coast, in the Northeast, and throughout the Midwest. So, but go to our store locator also if you are interested in a specific location on our website, and you can find a store that we're in.
And then any ways that they can reach out, interact, and of course follow Moon Deck. So social, email.
Yeah, definitely follow us on Instagram. That's where we'll do most of our updates. So moondeck.footwear. And that's our handle on there. Anything that we do or updates will come straight from there. If you want to follow our newsletter, sign up your email on our website. And then info@moondeck.co if you want to reach out to us directly. And either my brother or myself will be monitoring that email. So you'll get a reply directly from us at this stage, at least.
Right. Hey, man. Well, thank you so much for letting me show this, and of course, letting me try these on. So I appreciate you and your work. I'm looking forward to having these out here in Maryland even. So yeah, man, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ian.